Well, hello, tribe. Welcome back to another episode of Dare to Daydream. So excited for my guest today. If you've followed her on social media or if you know her personally, she is someone who has an energy about her that's so contagious. I don't think she's ever stopped smiling. Kelsey Lensman, how are you?
Michael, I am so excited. And for those listening, I tried to not smile during that, but it still happened. So I'm like so excited to jam out today and just to give value to your audience.
Awesome. No, we're so happy to have you here. And we've talked about this for a couple of weeks, so I'm glad we can make it happen. How's your day? But I have to ask you before we begin. How full disclosure now, you had chicken nuggets for breakfast. Let's talk about that.
Yes. Okay, well, time out. I found these chicken nuggets at Giant Eagle. I live in Ohio, as do you here. And I'm telling you, the proteins on it's amazing, the carbs and fat. And if you know me, I'm a kid at heart. Like I love to do still kid things at heart. So chicken nuggets were great. We got some basketball shots up this morning. So I am a full high school internally thriving right now.
Uh-huh. No, I can get down with that. I When I shop for my kids and trying to cook at home, it's usually adult food, but there's sometimes when I go through the frozen food section looking for like what's the healthiest version of chicken tenders I can
Telling you
buy.
it's real good foods or something like that. I found them and
Yeah.
I love them, love them.
I made a note when I saw your post. I'll have to come back to that and talk to you about it. So very cool. What time did you get up this morning? You're an
Same
early
time.
riser.
Yeah, my alarm's for 4. I usually snooze it till like
Whew.
4:15, 4:20ish. And then we usually go train at 5. So that's kind of a normal, but I'll tell you quick, if you've ever heard of German volume training, it's
Mhm.
insane. You do 10 sets of 10 of like your working sets. And I did squats on Monday, and this is Friday by the time we're recording this. I am still sore from it today. And then I'm prepping up for the Murph tomorrow. So I'm like, okay, today we are not training. We're just going to go shoot some basketballs, and it was a good time, but I'm still trying to recover from it a little bit.
No, I saw that you were doing that. It's been a few years since I did the German volume. We would kind of work it in like maybe I don't know every 6 to 8 weeks or something like that.
Oh, Lord.
But
That's some of the ball.
it's 10 sets of 10, right?
Uh-huh. Yep. Yep. And it felt like fine during it. And then the next 2
Hmm.
days I woke up and I was like, oh, this is why it's insane. I remember that.
Yeah, especially squats. Like that's just a different level of insanity. 100
It'll take your
reps and
soul.
just leave it right there on the floor. So
Yeah.
you're doing the Murph this weekend. That's something I've never done.
Tomorrow at 7:30 if you wanna come. So
Yeah.
yeah, I usually actually, not to cut to Mission 48, but I did it at the day 1 of Mission 48 and then day 48 of Mission 48, and usually I'll do it,
Oh.
every Memorial Day weekend. It's for, an individual that served and ended up losing his life to battle there, and so it's in honor of him, and it's you do a mile run, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, and then a mile run. But you can
Hmm.
kinda chunk it up depending it, and it was just for me, it's just a heart check every year of it's not about the workout, but it's about like, where's my heart in this workout? Is it just to do something cool every year, or is it to truly pay tribute to those that serve and protect our country? So I'm out of town on this upcoming week, so I'm going to do it tomorrow in honor of it.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, I've seen it. I know a lot of the local gyms do it around here, and I've yet to try. So it gives me time to train and no excuses for next year. Full
Hey,
calendar year.
you still got a day. If you want to come tomorrow at 7:30, buddy, all game.
I think I could hang with most of it. It might take me a while, but I
You
think I
you
could finish. I might need some assistance on 100 pull-ups. That's
Oh,
after
yes.
about after about 50. That's going to get rough.
Yeah, I mean, and this kind of also goes along with your podcast too. It's also a mental check, and
Yeah.
I think the reason why I don't just do crazy workouts 24/7, but the reason why I like those sometimes mental checks throughout the year is you get to a point where adversity comes, you want to give up, your body's tired, your mind's tired, like everything is telling you just to stop. But you have to dig deep internally to keep going, and I
Mm,
always talk about too, there's sometimes got to be a deeper why, right? The why isn't just for me
mm,
to finish the workout tomorrow. The why is for the people that don't get to work out anymore. And so I
wow.
think I like throwing those kind of curveballs to myself sometimes. It doesn't make sense sometimes training, but it makes sense mentally for me. And so, yeah, it takes a lot of mental fortitude. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I sense you're the type of person that takes that mentality into a lot of what you do. Is you probably are getting stuck in something or something gets hard, then you remind yourself of I have the privilege, right? And
Yeah.
you're probably one of those people that your brain goes to gratitude, and it's like, well, I get to be here, and I get to
Yeah.
to to do the Murph, or to do this podcast, or we can get into some of the projects that you've done in the past and stuff you're working on. But is that how you sometimes get through the grind?
I'll be honest with you, I try. Like that is a mentality that I really try to have. I would be lying to you straight out if I'll tell you that I'm always like that. There's some days, some moments, entrepreneurship where you're like, why the heck am I doing it? And I try to like detach emotionally and just be like, Kels, like you're so grateful to be in this position.
Mm,
But sometimes my emotions do take over and it's just frustrating and discouraged in the moment. But once again, I think for me, it's like kind of when you train your brain a certain way. Like for me, it's workouts. It's easy to train my brain in workouts that, hey, when it gets hard, how do I respond? Do I dig deep and
hmm
say, hey, Kels, there's people out there that can't work out? Or like in Mission 48, there's girls out there that, need you to keep going in this. And so I try to be in that heart posture and I try to have that mentality. But once again, we're all human, and so I don't like to paint a picture of, hey, I always choose gratitude when it gets hard,
Yeah.
but that's something that I try to be intentional about. And when I don't, I also reflect in of like, okay, how could I have done that a little bit better?
hmm Yeah, I think it's that balance of, like you said, we're human, and when we just don't have it some days, and I think it's that grace to give ourselves. Right, we give it to so many other people, but a lot of times we don't give it to ourselves. Of like, hey, man, you just didn't have it today. Move on. Start again. Try again tomorrow.
Yep. And
Gratitude
that's
wasn't there.
Yeah, but it's interesting though, not to dig into this full-heartedly, but I think many people outwardly looking in, whether it's entrepreneurship, fitness, like you name it, it can be anything. I think they see other people and they're like, well, they never have these days that they're experiencing internally. Well,
Mm,
she never is undisciplined. I hear that all the time. I'm like, y'all don't know my life. She never struggles through a workout. She never wants to give up. And I was like, if you only knew what was going on internally, and I try to be transparent about it on social, but that's why I like to kind of pull the veil back of, what people think other people do and what the reality is of it, because it's like, it's not always rainbows and sunshine 24/7. There are some amazing days and, the days that you feel that payoff from the work that you're putting in. But at the end of the day, too, there's days that are just freaking tough, for lack of a better way to say it. And I think understanding that everybody has those days, no matter, who you look up to or what they're doing, but it's the name of the game is just not giving up and just like waking up the next day and saying, hey, there's going to be a next day that's going to be better. That truly is what I feel like the superpower is. And that's available to anybody, but you just got to keep
mm.
persisting through to the point where you will get to one of those high days that it's the payoff again.
Yeah, Andy Billman was on a few weeks ago, and he was talking about that, and just battles with cancer, and certain setbacks with business. It's that the identity we choose to see the situation in, right? Is I can choose to see it going down this path, or I can reroute my attitude and select maybe an unknown future that looks really good and try and direct it towards that path.
Yeah.
So
That's so
I think
good.
that's really,
That's so
yeah.
good. And it's funny, because I think people like even at the beginning of the podcast, you're like, "Oh, she's always smiling," and people think I'm just very optimistic all the time. And I don't see life in like rose-colored glasses, right? Like I'm still very real about life. There's still, moments that are hard, but I always say like, what am I gaining from looking at the bad of certain situations? What am I gaining from
Mm,
wasting time on, oh, this isn't going well, or oh man, it's not working out for me. I'm not gaining anything. If anything, I'm just losing time, losing energy, losing effort that I could be putting towards something. So once again, I try to be realistic, but at the same time, I think I am too optimistic because it's like I only have everything to gain, nothing to lose there, and I
mm,
think that a lot of people uh, kind of choose the other, and I try to switch their mentality a little bit with it.
mm-hmm. No, that's a great perspective. So you're from the Hall of Fame city, is that correct? Canton, Ohio.
Good old Canton, Ohio, baby. Yep.
I, and so I gotta ask, how many times have you been to the hall?
Oh my gosh. I think once. I think once inside, but it's so different than when I grew up there now, though. I
Yeah,
mean, they completely renovated the whole thing, but I think I was once inside of it, and I think I ran like a 5K. My first ever 5K. I think I ran in front of it too. So yeah, no, I love where I grew up. I think it was a great place. And at the same time, though, I think my heart and soul is like itching to get out and go experience more too. So it's a
yeah,
it's a good contrast.
I get that. No, I have to ask that question because I grew up 40 minutes south of there and I've never been. And
Oh,
I know. And my dad and my brothers, like at least once a year, we're like, this is the year we're gonna go. And we still get to make it. But I have been inside Fawcett Stadium, but yeah, we've never been inside the hallways of.
okay, there you go. It's different now, so you'd actually probably be way better now going to it than back then anyway.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Oh, it's good.
So this is kind of interesting and unplanned. So my last guest a couple weeks ago was Dr. Jessica Bennett, and she was a walk-on rower at Ohio State on the rowing team. And you and I have coffee a few days after that, and you start telling me, and I already like kind of unpacked some similarities between you and Jessica, and then you're like, yeah, then I was on the rowing team at OSU. I'm like, stop it. So so you played sports in high school, but it was not your first goal to play sports in college. Is that right?
Yeah, so I played, basketball and volleyball. Basketball was my main sport in high school, and, I mean, not to, like, toot our own horn, but, like, we were very good. We made it to states, like, we were like, that was basketball was, all year round. That was the focus, right? And,
Hmm.
I think also too back then, that version of Kelsey, she struggled a lot with confidence. I think she sought out a lot of validation from how she played. So if she had an amazing game, she felt great. If she had a terrible game, even if it wasn't terrible, but she thought it was terrible or I missed a shot, it's like my whole worth was determined in the outcome of how I played, right? And so
Hmm.
I think from a psyche standpoint, like psychologically, I was over it. I didn't want to play in college. I would get not so many letters, but I would get a lot of letters from very prominent schools to say, "Hey, can you come? We're interested in you." And I remember, Michael, I would get that letter and I wouldn't even open it. I would throw it in the trash can. And
Wow.
and I think too, I reflect back on that time, and for me, it's like divine timing, right? I believe in there's a reason for the timing and everything that happens, and I wouldn't be here today if I think I played in college. But I think about the athlete that I could have been, or even the path that I could have taken, if what I know now I knew back then about confidence, about my worth, about some of the more the psychological things that I think has influenced me a ton. So, long story long, I went to Ohio State to just party it up my 4 years at Ohio State. And I ended up joining the rowing team my freshman year. And I always say that was such a blessing in disguise for me because I didn't realize how much my identity was tied to an athlete until it was gone. And so when I went to Ohio State, I still had practice. I still had my girls. I still had my team. I still had like things that I needed to go to, goals that I was working towards. And that was really influential my freshman year. But then after that, they basically told me, hey, you either continue rowing, because it was basically a full time job at that point, too, or you choose sports medicine, which was my career. That was my major that I was focusing on. And you couldn't do both because of clinicals. And so I ended up not doing, obviously, rowing. I was not going to be a professional rower my whole entire life. So I chose sports medicine. And that was that led the trajectory of everything for me because I remember that sophomore year. I remember waking up. I remember walking in my bathroom, looking in the mirror and being like, man, like, who am I? Like, I didn't see Kelsey. I saw a
Mm,
girl that was doing the right thing, getting the good grades, doing amazing in clinicals, but she was just like giving
yeah.
to so many people around her. And I didn't see my identity anymore. And I realized my identity was being the athlete. So when it wasn't an athlete anymore, like, who am I? So yeah, it was an incredibly impactful time. And also rowing was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I would count ceiling tiles when we'd be on the ergs. I would count cars that drove by when we'd be on the erg. So it taught me a lot of lessons for sure.
Wow. So you said your sophomore year in college is when you kind of had this awareness of wow, because I feel like a time when it's so hard because you're 19, 20 years old, and especially coming out of high school and you had the awareness of I don't want to. Yeah, all these letters are coming in. This isn't who I want to be anymore. So that's crazy awareness being that young of of a of a kid or young adult that you could see that, and then that when that kind of translated into college, for you to see it of like, well, I'm picking my future now and looking at
Yeah.
yourself in the mirror as a sophomore, like that's already a crucially like really tough time of like, what do you want to do the rest of your life? You're halfway through,
Yeah.
your the days of university. So do you did you know like sports medicine from an early age and then this is it and blinders were on, or like when did you kind of have this like this is my mission?
So it's interesting you shared like how I was really young because there's a few really impactful moments in my life, and I saw the reason why it was also sophomore year is I also got out of a really terrible relationship, and so it was kind of the culmination of many factors in my life that led to me kind of looking inward. But from a sports medicine standpoint, kind of we'll reverse it a little bit. When I was a freshman in high school, I was on a four wheeler, and I ended up having a really bad four wheeling accident, and I shattered my complete lower leg. So basically, from kind of like my mid shin down, I was in fragments basically. And so that freshman year, I mean, I was supposed to play varsity, like do kind of that was a big part of my future was athletics there. And so when that was kind of taken away from me, I'll never forget that time frame. I'm so grateful for it now, hindsight 2020, because this would have been June, July of that summer, and my freshman year was, that upcoming fall time frame. And I got out of surgery, kind of emergency surgery. I had this Frankenstein looking external fixator on my leg. So they literally, because I didn't have enough tissue, they would put these metal rods in my leg that stuck out from my leg,
Oh
and then this
wow.
big metal rod, like that goes alongside of it. And I'll never forget this. The doctor came in that next morning. He picked my leg up by the metal rod, and we're like, "What are you doing?" But he basically also said in that, which will go along to your question, he's like, Kels, I hate to break it to you. You're not going to play any sports this upcoming year. No volleyball, obviously, no basketball. Like it's just not going to happen for you. And I never cried, Michael, until that moment, because once
Wow.
again, kind of the hopes and the dreams that I had, it felt like it was kind of vanishing. But I remember I made a decision in that moment, and I was like, watch me. Okay. You might not
Mm,
play, but you don't know who you're talking to right now. Like you don't know who's inside of me. And so, oh my gosh, that recovery process, yes, physically was hard. Oh my lord, mentally, so much more mentally. And I had amazing athletic trainers and physical therapists that just helped me get back. And I'll never forget the first time I didn't walk for about 6 months because of the external fixator. Then I had a cast. And so I'll never forget the first time I tried to walk. And I was what, 15 years old? Like I've been walking my whole life basically. I took a step with my left, which was my good leg, and then I took a step with my right, and I just fell over. Like
mm,
my brain forgot to walk, my body forgot to walk. I didn't trust my leg. But once again, day in and day out, I just had to rebuild that within my body. And I showed up on the basketball court my freshman year. And
wow.
so the reason why that was impactful for me is because those people that helped me in my life, I'm like, man, I want to be that person for somebody else when they're, kind of frustrated or beat down or this injury happened. So since that freshman year, it's always been kind of a piece of my heart that I want to help people from a sports medicine injury standpoint. But then I also thought I could graduate in physical therapy in 4 years, which you can't. So then I was going to go to athletic training my undergrad and then physical therapy grad school post grad. But obviously that didn't happen. So it's always been big in my heart to help people the way that I needed help back then too.
Mm-hmm. Man, what a cool lesson that young too that you could
It was.
attach to it, right, and take with you.
Yeah.
And so you shared with me a couple, or last week when we had coffee. Then you get to your senior year, and I love this. Grad school was in the crosshairs, and you could see that was possibly next, as you just mentioned. And then you hear the God whisper, as you mentioned it. And that's, I think, when the hair stood up in my arms, I was like, keep going, let me hear about this. So what happened senior year in college? You're entering the what's next phase to start to break into your career and in grad school first. And was this God whisper?
Oh, I've had a few in my life, well, many in my life, but a few that I've acknowledged. And I'm telling you, Michael, I wanted to push that God whisper down so deep because it was uncomfortable. I'm like, no, 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 God, not right now. We're not doing this right now. But like I said, when I had that kind of revelation my sophomore year of like, who am I? I remember really not knowing where to start, but I'm like, Kels, like just get back to the gym, right? Like you're not really working out anymore. You know that's good for you. You don't really know what you're doing working out, but like just get back to the gym, right? And so I just like kind of kept showing up for myself junior year, and then into that senior year, it was kind of twofold for me. So one fold was I was really bettering myself, yes, physically, but I was also bettering myself mentally, spiritually, like me as a whole human. I was really leveling up, and I ended up competing in a few bodybuilding competitions my senior year. And I tell everybody it had nothing to do with bodybuilding. It had nothing to do with the body that I had, anything like that. but it had everything to do with I did something I didn't think that I could do, and I think breaking that belief for me of, wait, I never thought I'd be stepping on stage, but wait, I just did it. And wait, and now I'm going to nationals. And it was like, well, if I can do that, what else can I do? And so I saw how I kind of really transformed my life. And I'm like, man, I know there's so many people out there, because I used to be it, that need somebody to kind of go alongside of them to say, hey, you can do it too, and to help them from kind of more of a, I hate this word, it's a buzzword, but like a holistic view, right? So that was kind of the
Sure.
one part of it. The second part of it was I was in sports medicine, right? And so I was seeing people with knee injuries, with back injuries, all these things post injury. And then I would see how people move in the gym, and I'm like, well, no wonder they're injured. Like they just don't know how to move correctly, right? And so I was like, man, can we be proactive with this? Teach people how to move right versus reactive, and then help them after injuries. And so kind of with both of those combined, I always said for 8 years I was going to go to physical therapy school, right? I tell everybody, had my whole life planned out. I was going to go to PT school, have 2.5 kids, have a white picket fence. Like, oh, Michael, my life was planned. You will know, like I had everything planned out, because I was very much too like a play it safe girl. Like that was the plan. I'm going to stick to it. I'm going to do really well at school, and just kind of mark off the next step in life, I guess you could say. And I had a gut feeling, or the God whisper, so deep in my soul. It would have been the fall of my senior year. So that's when everybody was getting grad school letters back. The kind of previous Kelsey would have went to grad, or had grad school letters come in, tell her which school she was going to. And it was very weird for me that that wasn't kind of lighting me up. That was a very kind of red flag. And I just had a gut feeling of like, Kels, like you got to go for it, girl. You don't know how to start a business. You don't know, you kind of know what business you're starting, but you don't know what you're doing business wise. But I always, I've made a lot of decisions based on this theory, and I think you'll hit home with it. And it's what I call my rocking chair theory. And I don't know if I heard this, or I think I just made it up, but I've heard also people talk about it. And at that moment, I envisioned myself 95 years old. I am on my rocking chair. I have my little blanket. I have the fire going. Like I have this visual in my brain. And my biggest success in life is I get to that version of me, and that version of me looks back on my whole life, from little up until now. And she's like, Kels, you freaking did it. You didn't let doubt, fear, hesitation, others' opinions affect your trajectories or your decisions. Like you took the risks, you made some successes, you also had some failures, but you lived life. Like you did not base your life on other people's expectations. Like that's my biggest success. So I'm like, all right, girl, like you freaking lived. You should be proud of you, right? On the flip end, though, and sometimes this is a bigger motivator for me, is I think about that version of me, and she looks back on my life thinking, what if? What if you didn't let doubt get in the way? What if you didn't let hesitation get in the way? What if you didn't let others' opinions or what you think other people's expectations get in the way? And that, when I think about that, Michael, that frame for me is so incredibly powerful, because it's like, I only get one shot at this, right?
Mm,
I get
yeah.
one shot at this life. And so when I was in that decision making process of, do I start my business or do I go the safe path? I'm like, Kels, you'll never freaking know. If you don't take this risk or decision, or, don't take the leap to listen to that gut feeling, you will be 95 years old thinking, what if? And I don't want to live that life. Like I don't want to live that version of me. And so that's when I said, screw it. Like, let's go for it. I mean, and as you know, and many people know, owning a business, starting a business, um, it is one of the biggest personal development that you can ever imagine. It's up, it's down, it's twisted, side, it's side. But right now, I wouldn't change it for the world, because I'm a different human because I made that decision. So that is a long story, but hopefully that gives some context there.
A ton. That has so much value. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I've seen, some of the things I follow where they're doing, interviews now with elderly people,
Mhm.
late 80s, 90s, 100 years old. And they highlight what you talked about is, they never say, I regret doing this, 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 and this. It's the things that I didn't do that I regret, the chances I didn't take, because you're going to fail, right? If you're 95 years old, between when you were 9 months old and tried to walk and you fell on your face, you failed, right? Got back up all the way through life. And it's, if you don't take the risk of doing something, well, you're never going to know, and you're going to fail regardless of playing it safe at something.
Yes, yes.
So yeah, that's so true. So
There's
thank
a
you. That
quote.
was
Can I
Please,
share this
please
quote?
lay it on me. Lay it on me. Yeah.
Hold on, I have to oh, I can't find it, that's okay. But I was listening to this podcast, I might have sent you this quote. Oh, it was something to the effect of, it's on my phone real quick here, and I know this is gonna be valuable to your audience, which is why I bring it up. Okay,
Yes, please do.
it says this. It said, "The discomfort of growth is less dangerous than the illusion of safety." I'm going to say it again. Okay.
Mm,
The discomfort of growth, the discomfort of the decision of starting a business, the discomfort of starting your fitness journey, whatever you have it, is less dangerous than the illusion of safety. And I think
wow.
that that is so profound there because I think so many people, myself included, have made so many decisions because it feels safer, right?
Yeah.
Grad
Yeah.
school feels safe. And I'm saying physical therapy is great. I'm not, nothing against physical therapy, but like this decision feels safe. It feels known. It feels predictable, right? But there's an illusion of that safety because safety is only safe for so long until you realize I've been living life based on their script, you know?
Hmm.
So it was just so profound. And I love that quote because I was like, that's so damn true, you know?
That is so. Take me through this then. Starting your business or anything back in those days, like the bodybuilding. Actually, that's a good example. As you said I didn't have the experience. I wasn't doing it for these reasons. I was doing it because something that out of the norm for me, and it was something that I hadn't done before. So take me through like what's that look like if someone says I want to be that, but that is so big and so crazy. Like I can't imagine getting there. How do I even start? Like it seems like there's a million steps to get there. I don't even know how to take the first step. Like, do you remember like going through that in those
Oh
days
my
and like
God.
push
So
through and fear, right? It's all fear. But how do you push through to get some momentum going to be like, okay, I think I can do this?
So this is so funny. This is the book that I'm writing, like literally, because what I've seen too, and this is myself, is like we have these dreams, right? And this can be even, it's not small, but what people think of small, like, hey, I want to, walk outside more, whatever that goal is for them, or dream, or start a business. It's like we have these dreams, these goals, these God whispers, but it's like the Kelsey that I am today is so freaking far from the Kelsey that accomplishes those dreams and goals, right? And so I don't call it this, but I've heard this is like there's the dream gap. There's this dream,
Mm,
but it's over here, and where I'm at is right here. And so many people get lost in this dream gap because they don't think that they're capable of it or they don't know how to do it. And so they either stop and don't do it or just think that, well, I guess it's just a crazy idea and I can't do it. And this was me, Michael, a little bit more recent for Mission 48. And I know I haven't talked about it, but I put that dream on hold for 2 years because I didn't think I could do it and I didn't know how to do it. And I remember I won't tell the whole story, but I remember making the decision of like, Kels, freaking go for it. You're never going to know. And I was like, I don't know how to start a national campaign. I don't know how to raise enough money for this. Like, where do you start? And I'm going to tell
yeah.
your audience this. Okay. This is what helped me. All right. When there is a bajillion things that you can think of, what I did is I brain dumped everything on a laundry list of what I could think of. There's like 200 things. Get sponsors. How do you get sponsors? Like all these different pieces of it, right? I just brain dumped it because, at least in my opinion, it's like if I can get it on a piece of paper, it makes it a little bit less overwhelming for me because I can see it, right? Sometimes when we have so many thoughts in, oh man, but what about this? What about this in our brain? It literally clogs our brain up so we don't know like what to do, right? So
Hmm.
first step, and I'm going to challenge your audience, if it's a dream or a goal, right? Brain dump everything that you think. It might not even be quote unquote right that you think needs to be done for that dream or that a question that you need to ask for that dream, right? But then this is where the next step happens. And I would say think big, focus on the small, start on the small, act in the
Mm,
small, right? So
hmm.
I had my 200 thing laundry list. All right. Did it feel overwhelming? 1000%. But what I did there is I said, okay, Kels, every Wednesday for 2 hours, not even a whole day, not even multiple days a week, every Wednesday for 2 hours, you are going to focus on one thing on that list. And so, you know what? I dedicated Wednesday because I still had a business to run. I still had things that I need to take care of. I couldn't just, up and leave everything. I still had to have responsibilities, but I gave myself permission to focus on it for 2 hours. Okay. And then I put one thing off the list, and then I put another thing off the list. And slowly, slowly, it started getting to be a smaller list. So I really acted in the small, but then I also did this. And I don't mean to kind of give you everything, but I'm going to give you everything real quick. Okay. So I focused on the small, I acted on the small,
Okay.
but then I said, hey, who's done this before? Is there anybody that I know has done this
Uh,
before? Okay. Is there anybody that has the results that I wanted to have? For me, when I want to do a national campaign, I'm like, I don't know what sponsors. I don't even know how do you get sponsors. And I'm like, well, there's this guy that bear crawled a marathon and he had a lot of sponsors. And hey, he works for a lot of companies that do sponsorships. Can I get in his ecosystem somehow? You know? And so once again, I try to surround myself or reach out to or utilize resources or Google, like who has done the thing that I want to do or in a sphere of where I want to be. And I'll try to get around them and then I'll just ask questions, you know? And so I think the combination of number one, humbling yourself of it's okay to feel overwhelmed. But yes, brain dump. Then number two, just take one thing off that list, just start small. Okay. And then also number three is who's done something that you already want to do and can you reach out to them? Can you ask a question to them? Can you just also just get some guidance there because I think it less feels a little bit less intimidating there. And it also closes a lot of loops of like that 200 list that I had actually went down to 50 because I didn't need to do the other 150 because he helped me understand better strategies or routes to take. Does that make sense?
100%. I love that. It's like you would check one off the list, but that probably snowballed into something else, right? Like the guy that bear crawling might have went, well, I didn't get the company or the sponsor, but that led to this, or that conversation was an introduction over here.
Yep.
And it reminds me of when you were talking about your list. I love that. I started to do it a little bit more too when Dr. John Deloney talks about this. Facts are our friends, right? So if you're coming to the crossroads and it's all fear based, right? And it's this garbage in your head. Start writing down the facts. That's the truth, right? Oh, it's actually not as bad, or it's not as hard as I thought. If I just take 2 hours of an entire week, because that kind of lowers the pressure on you, right? If,
That's
especially someone like you that's going, probably hardcore for 14 hours a day, if not more, like, okay, for 7 days a week, all I got to do is 2 hours, right? And then it just kind of snowballs into something. So that's such good advice. I love
yeah.
that.
And it kind of piggyback too in this quote, it rings true in my life at least. And it's that action kills fear. And I think it's
Mm,
action kills fear. A lot of times fear will, and even to this day, I mean, there's still certain things that I'm like, ooh, like that's really big. I'm kind of fearful about. But
yeah,
I think fear will grow when there's inaction present, when it's this really big, intimidating thing that it's like, ooh, I don't know if I can do it. Like that's where fear will get you. And it's just going to grow and grow and grow into something bigger. When you start taking action on something, it's not that like tomorrow you wake up and you're like, okay, I can do it, but that action kills fear a lot of times.
hmm.
And that can be so powerful.
Do you ever go back, like you'll be driving in your car someday, or you'll be, in the gym or doing something, and your mind kind of drifts, and you start laughing at what you used to think was scary? Like, oh, that was a big deal back then, right? Like, action kills fear, but like at the time, and it builds confidence, I guess. Maybe you could shed some light on that. But yeah, do you ever go back and go like, oh my gosh, just 6 months ago or 18 months ago, it took me days to make that call or send that email or post this or whatever it might be, and now you're like, I can't even forgot that was scary.
So, can I share a quick story about that? I
Please
know I've
do,
shared
please
so
do.
many stories on this, but there's one that pulls out. So when I first started my company, I had merchandise that I would sell, like t-shirts and stuff. I spent a whole entire week, not like an hour a day, a week looking up online how to ship merchandise for the most cost effective way. I looked up UPS, I looked up postal, like I looked up everything and I'm like, I don't know how to ship merchandise. Yes, like it obviously go to the post office and ship it, but it felt so big in that moment. And now I do it all the time. Like it's like, okay, just put things on, you do this and you send it out.
Yeah,
That was one of the things where I'm like, oh my God, I would stress out about how do I ship merchandise. And now it's just something I do every day. So
yeah,
it's so true.
love that, love that. So I want to definitely go dive into Empower Her, into Mission 48.
Mhm.
What Mission 48 was before Empower Her, is that correct?
No, no, no. So
Other way around. Okay, so when you started, you came out of college, started your own company. That was that Empower Her, or was it something prior to that?
good question. So when I started, it was originally KML movement, my initials and then movement.
Okay,
And I started a lot more of the hybrid of fitness and sports medicine. So I would be a lot in person for people here.
Hmm.
And I've always wanted to do it differently and bigger. But once again, I think I got used to just how I operated. And I mean, it brought some money in, but not super great, And then what happened was COVID happened, obviously.
Hmm.
And I was 100% in person. And so this business that I had for the past 2, 3 years, it was sink or swim. It was like, all right, Kelsey, you're either going to figure this out for your people, or you know what you've put so much time and sweat equity into is just going to go to the wayside. And you obviously your audience kind of knows me by now. It's like, all right, I'm not going to let this thing die. Like, that's not happening. So I that time frame was incredibly stressful for me. I think I worked so many hours a day, and I 180'd my business to be online there. And so that's when it was still KML movement, but then when I worked with people all online, and then we had our events that we started. This would have been 2021. That's when we rebranded to EmpowHER Fitness, and it's kind of been up until then. And then Mission 48 was last year, so 2023.
Okay. I want to go there because one of the first discoveries I had of Kelsey, and this is prior to discovering that you and I worked out at the same gym.
Yeah.
Mission 48. What is Mission 48? First, let's go to I guess, kind of the why, the cause, who it supports, what awareness it brings around, and then take us on this crazy 48-day journey that you went on.
Gosh, I learned so much. Good, bad, everything in between. So what Mission 48 is it was actually a dream I had like probably 3 years ago. And I was watching this documentary. It was incredibly inspiring. And I was like, you know what, Kels? Like, what if you could do 48 different competitions, everything from a marathon or a CrossFit event or powerlifting in 48 states, so the inland states, but it was originally, Michael, going to be in 48 weeks. Okay. And I was going to do like a Spartan race on a Saturday and then speak at a school for young girls to talk about confidence and all that on like a Wednesday. Right. And I was like, oh, this would be cool. I sat on that for 2 years because I was like, is this just a crazy shiny object syndrome that it sounds cool, but Kelsey, is that really realistic? And then finally, I could not disacknowledge the whisper anymore. Like it just kept coming up, coming up, coming up. And I try to push it so hard down, but I'm like, all right, Kelsey, like you have to face it. And faith's pretty big in my life. So I shot a prayer upstairs and I'm like, please give me the biggest sign in the world, whether to pursue it or not. And I will have you, I've never had this happen before. The next morning, I went to go train like I normally wake up and go train. And for some reason, I never do this, but I listened to a podcast instead of music. Okay. And in this podcast, oh, it gives me goosebumps even to this day. It was this guy interviewing this other gentleman, and he was like, yeah, he goes, you know what, I go on all these missions, and he's like, he does something physically challenging to raise money for a charity. And that was like parallel to what I wanted to do, right? And then he said this, and it was sold. And there's a reason why I bring this up. He said so many people live in the 5 and 6s, like life is good but not great, but also not terrible. He's like, so many people want to go for the 9s and 10s, but they're too afraid because what if it becomes a 1 or a 2? And I
Oh,
was
wow.
literally mid back squat. I had like a lot of weight on my back, and I was like, I'm doing it. I'm gonna do it. And so that next day is when I wrote my laundry list out. And so kind of fast forward here, what it actually is I did 48 different fitness competitions, like I said, ranging from all different types in 48 states. And now the kicker is it's in 48 days. And so what we did, the big ethos of it was to really inspire a lot of women and young girls, just because that's who we predominantly work with, but to push their limits, show themselves they're capable of more, and to really build true self-confidence. And then we partnered with a charity actually locally here to Columbus, but they work in schools all around the country, and called Rocks, and they do 20-week programs in schools for young girls, and they talk about things like confidence and body image and leadership. And so our big goal was to fund a good amount of girls, about 10,000 girls for their program. And I learned so much. Some things I would have done the same, some things I would do very differently, but it has changed me in ways that I never thought, to be honest with you.
Wow. So how long did it take to set up sponsorships? And I know you did the RV life, and which I can relate to. We did the RV life
Mhm.
thing for a minute. But yeah, how long did it take to get to, was this like a year planning and then which events and set it up? And you had to call ahead to notify other gyms I'm coming? Did you have a camera crew? Was it just you and an iPhone? And I think your dad maybe helped you. And when I I'll post your social accounts because I know there's a really cool interview I believe local news channel
Yeah.
did here on it. It was a fantastic interview that you did. But like, take me through like the logistics and the planning stage because being in 48 states and doing 48 workouts is mind blowing in itself. Knowing you, it's not surprising, but it's mind blowing to do. Most people can't do 48 workouts in
Yeah.
75 days, but you did them in 48 days. But like, how did you set all this up?
Oh, that is a whole podcast in of itself, but I'll spare your audience. So initially when it was 48 weeks, right, there's an event on a Saturday anywhere you go, right? There's a run, there's a Spartan race, there's something you can find on a Saturday. But when I switched to 48 days and I switched it 5 months before I left, so not that long.
Oh
When I
wow.
switched when I switched it to 48 days, that changed everything, right? Because now there's no Spartan race on a Tuesday in South Dakota. And so this actually made
Mm,
it way more incredibly difficult for me, but also way more impactful. And so instead of just going to a competition or going to an event, what I did is I created all these events. And so in the 48 states, I would throw a free event for women or girls to come join me with it. And I partnered with a gym or a run club or a biking club. And so their community would come and do it with me. And then we would obviously go on to the next state. So I'll never forget this. I printed out a picture of the United States, all the states, and I took a ruler and I just like rough estimated, hey, if I go to this city, how much time and effort would it take? And so I still have the pictures today. There's just this wonky PDF that I had, and I would, just change it when I would call a city and they're like, oh, we don't have anything. I'd go to a different city. So it was absolutely insane. And so then what I would do is I would reach out to local companies or other gyms or the news stations, and I sent them like a whole media packet for that state, and then they would also help people, to come to. So that was it. And then to actually go on it, I had 6 people and a dog go with me. Well, 5 others and a dog go with me. So I had my dad, Jared, who went with me, a physical therapist, a kind of like neuromuscular therapist, and then a videographer. So we have all the content. We actually are going to turn it into a documentary and a book in the future. So it
oh,
was
cool.
wild. It was wild. Yeah.
What, so logistically, were there some spots you got to, some races, some workout genres where it was like, Kelsey got it done, out. We got to get the road for the next one. Like you probably didn't have a
Oh,
whole lot of time just to hang out in Bismarck or just hang out and like chill for the night. Like you were probably what was the longest drive between cities?
I have a whole spreadsheet. You'll laugh at this. I had the time that we arrived, the time that event started, the time that event ended, the time that we had to leave. And it was out west. I mean, those states are
Yeah.
far. So it,
Yeah.
it was no joke. I think the longest might have been 11 hours. So I mean, think
Okay.
about that there. You get somewhere, you do it, you leave. I mean, they were driving. I cannot give enough credit to Jared and my dad because they were driving, I mean, through the night with this big freaking RV. And it did not do well. Sometimes we had our brakes caught on fire on the side of the Teton Mountains going into we're Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So like it was
Yep.
just it's kind of adversity after adversity, but I had to get it done. You don't know other option.
You're like the rock star. You're like the lead singer of a rock band, like in the back sleeping, right? Like on to the next show.
Oh, it was crazy. It was I'll be very transparent. Some ways it was exactly how I thought. In some ways it was definitely not how I thought. So like I said, I would go back and do things a little bit differently. I think I focused a lot more logistically, which I needed to, right? But I would have doubled down a lot on like the marketing and messaging piece, which I didn't do too well at. So
Hmm.
you just learn a lot. You learn a lot by doing something crazy like that, and more also about yourself than anything.
Take me through when you got home because that had to have been obviously physically exhausting, mentally exhausting, but and everything you just talked about a little bit ago with like starting with this vision, but you had to just take one step. I'm sure Mission 48 was the same of like, gosh, how am I going to deal with it? Especially when you pivoted and went, I'm not going to do 48 weeks, I'm going to do 48 days. So when it was
Yep.
all done, was it just this celebration? Was it, I need some quiet me time to meditate
Yeah.
on, just focus on what just happened? Like, take me through, like, what was the next, you get home, the next few days, do you even remember of what that
I
felt like?
do. Yeah, I was happy to be done. I'll tell you that. I was very happy to be done. I was so grateful for the trip, but once again, it almost felt kind of like one gut punch after another, to be honest with you. And a lot of people didn't see what was happening. I didn't post all the things that was happening externally too. And so I was ready to be home. I was ready to
Mm.
kind of like let everything settle. And it was a mix, Michael. This is so interesting. Nobody's asked me this yet. It was a mix of like, man, you went for it. Like, I'm proud of you that you went for it. And if I'm being so freaking honest right now, it was also a mix of like, it did not turn out the way that you wanted it to. And it
Mm.
also, and also the third one, real quick. And it was also a mix of, I was so clear about the hard decisions I needed to make going forward that I wanted to avoid so deeply. And I'll give you context a little bit to that. So Mission 48, obviously, it is a pattern interrupt in your life. No day is the same. Okay. Every day is different. That 48-day trip felt like a year, to be honest with you, in good
Yeah.
ways, challenging ways. But I think, and you don't need to do Mission 48 to receive this value, but when there is such a big pattern interrupt in your life, I'm not waking up at 5, going to work at 8, coming home at 5, eating dinner and going to bed. Like it's not just a rinse and repeat, right? Because that was such a pattern interrupt, I knew deeply in my heart coming back from Mission 48, I did not want to live the same life that I did before Mission 48.
Oh, wow.
And uh-huh, and I think that is the value that I didn't realize I was gonna gain in Mission 48, that I received incredible value from, and it had a lot of hard conversations that I had to have with myself of, "Okay, Kels, what does your personal life look like? Like, what do you want in your personal life? What about your business life? Like, are you on the trajectory that you wanna be on, right? What about you as a human? Do you want, the things that you've been doing, is that what you want going forward?" And I say, like, in many areas, once again, if I'm being honest, uh, I was avoiding a lot of hard conversations that I knew I needed to have. And so after that, not that I blew everything up the day after Mission 48, but personal life, professional life, like I shook the boat in a lot of ways.
Sure.
And Kelsey now, it's what, May 24, so not a full year after Mission 48, but sometimes after. Um, because I shook the boat, like, I am so more aligned today than I've ever been in my entire life. I'm so more clear on who I am about what I want than I've ever been. But I think, once again, I think people a lot of times just live this kind of rinse and repeat life. Like, okay, you know what, it'll get better, but is it really getting better? And they don't ask themselves those hard conversations. And so I'm going to kind of challenge your audience that you don't need to do Mission 48 to have those hard conversations, or get clear about, what is deeply on your heart, but you being honest with you is one of the most important things. And so that is what truly impacted me post Mission 48 more than anything.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't see that answer coming, but I
I
understand it.
know.
I love it though. That's so, so powerful. And to have that awareness, right? And that awakening and
So
tapping into and it goes back to what you were talking about the podcast of like, we're just happy with these fives and sixes rather than shooting for the nines and tens. And I think it's that awareness, right? Of tapping into our conscious versus just living our entire lives unconsciously we get to 95 years old and we're like, oh, I didn't realize I was until now that I didn't, risk or try certain things. And so I think it's a beautiful awareness. And if it took, it's like you said, it's for some people, it's a mission 48, something big and powerful they need to have that aha, that awakening. And other times it's just the course of a whisper over time. And definitely have a follow-up question for that here in a little bit. But so mission 48, so where is Empower Her today? Is it Empower Fitness? And I know there's an Empower Her. Is that kind of the same? Is it? Are you now back in the gym training and still doing online programs? I know you have an amazing following, and you have so many cool educational tools in fitness now. So, kind of take me to that part of your business and where you at today with it.
So, how we function from an Empower Fitness, so we have two main branches of it. And kind of full disclosure, we're actually going through a full rebrand right now. And it's gonna look even more epic in the future. But so we have a coaching arm, and this is all online. So we work one on one with women around the country to do things like nutrition and training, and basically whatever goal that they have, whether it be body comp, performance, we help them get there, but also learn how to fuel their bodies well during it. And
Hmm.
so that's kind of one division of the company, is coaching, more working more high level with individuals. And this other part, which it lights me up, is our events. And so what we have is all women strength events around the country. So you saw the one in Columbus. That's just how we
Yeah.
honestly first connected. So it's for women, all ages, all skill levels. We had 7 years old to 72 years old, I think it was.
Oh, very
And
cool.
the main goal with that is to not, I mean, yes, lift the weight, like that's cool, but it's to provide an environment for women to step out of their comfort zones, get wildly uncomfortable, and show themselves what they're capable of. And for me, I think I view fitness, for at least in my life, it's been the vehicle for me to break a belief in what I'm capable of. And then it makes me think like, well, what else in my life can I actually do? If I just did
Hmm.
a 300-pound deadlift, well, shit, I didn't think that I could do that. So then what else do I not think that I can do that I'm actually capable of? And so once again, disclosure, we're actually really expanding our events. And we're going to even kind of grow with more outdoors events and endurance events and like breath work and sauna and cold plunge events. And I want to create these environments and places for women to get uncomfortable, but to show themselves they're capable. And so that's it's kind of where we're headed going forward with it too.
Okay, go back to that real quick. Why do
Okay.
you want to get women to feel uncomfortable? I think maybe
Oh,
dig a little bit there. I know there's a more Kelsey drop coming with this one, but why unpack for me? Why when you have a client is that so big for them to get uncomfortable?
I'm going to give your audience a visual. This is the
Okay.
ethos of everything that I do. Okay. And many of you might have already seen this. So I want you to picture four circles and a small, like each circle within one another. So the smallest circle, that's your comfort zone. Okay. Then there's a other big circle outside of the small circle. And that's what's the fear zone. Right. And then there's another big circle outside the fear zone. That's the learning zone. And then the biggest circle outside all of them is the growth zone. Okay. And I always say when that visual just hits deep, because I think for
Mm,
so often that I was living in my comfort zone. I was doing the right thing. I was making the right choice, making the right path, right? But it's comfortable. It's predictable. It's known. My brain loves it, okay, because it's predictable, right? But so often people try to take a step out of their comfort zone and they feel that fear. What if I can't do it? What if I fail? Oh, I'm not capable of this yet. Like all those voices and thoughts in our head start to take us out. But what many people don't ever realize is when you keep persisting through that fear zone, you get to that learning zone. And I always say this zone, it's not the, oh my gosh, rainbows and butterfly. It's the, hey, I have a lot to learn. I'm actually really not good at what I thought that wanted to be good at. And so, once again, a lot of people stop here in that learning zone of like, oh, I'm actually not that great. But once
hmm.
again, they don't realize if they keep pushing, you get to that growth zone and you see what you're capable of, right? And so
Yeah.
what I like to do from more of our events is when you're in that comfort zone, it is fearful if I, fail a rep on a deadlift in front of hundreds of people, right? But if they do that thing where they step out and they can do it anyway and they show themselves like, wait, I didn't die. Like you're telling me that I just did that deadlift and it felt like I was going to die because my body was shaking, my arms were sweating, but then I did it anyway and I'm still surviving. And hey, I actually got that rep. Then once again, it breaks that belief of like, okay, I don't need to be fearful of the fear zone. I just got to persist through it. And so I think that is so incredibly important for each person to teach themselves of that little voice that talks them out of everything. It's not in control. It's not in control of like, oh, you know what? What if I can't do that? Or what if I fail? That voice is not in control. That wants to keep you in your comfort zone. What your capability is, what your potential is, it is so far outside of that. And so
Mm,
hopefully that answers your question, but that's why I really like to push people to that edge and that limit, because once again, their potential, their capability that's actually within them is on the other side of it. They just have to be willing to push through that.
yeah. It's that Michael Easter
Oh
uh,
god, I love that book. It's from my show.
his mentality in the comfort crisis is rule number one: don't die. But everything else falls below it is push, right? Push to the edge.
I sent my dad a picture of that and I was like, this explains my life right now.
He's like, Kelsey, let's not go back to the 4-wheeler incident. Let's
Put him
just
over
keep it a little safer these days. Yeah.
there. Oh Lord.
Oh, this is amazing. I love this. Kelsey, I have two final questions for you.
Okay, fire at me.
And I'm excited to ask you both of these because you've hinted at a little bit of both of them
Okay.
from this conversation. But first one is, what's one thing you've learned about yourself as you've gone through this experience? And this could be Mission 48, Empower Fitness, some of the things, or just your last 10 years, snapshot since having this God whisper of, no, Kelsey, you're supposed to be in this path over here. You're playing it safe, going this way. I want you to go this way. What's one thing you've learned about yourself?
that I am capable of so much more than I could ever imagine. And that is truly the underlying thing of everything that I do and everything that I try to inspire others with. And when I say I'm capable, I also think, and once again, I'm going to bring faith into this, that like God did not place the potential in you if you weren't able to do it. God did not place the dreams in you if it wasn't meant for you. God did not place your full capability within you if you weren't able to actually like tap into it, right? And so
Yeah.
I think so often we as humans will talk ourselves out of what we don't think that we're capable of. And I've seen this, and people see me today and they're like, well, Kels, that's just you. You're just the one that trains at 5 a.m. You're just the one that, writes the books and does his things. I was like, no, no, no. I had the same doubts and questions and fears, everything. If you would have saw me 10 years ago, I was a different version of me. But once again, when you start to realize, like, oh, I did that thing, I didn't think that I could do that. You realize, in my opinion, you have this unlimited capability. You just have to be willing to take one step and go pursue it. So that is by far the one thing that I've learned about myself.
Beautiful. And it goes back to being uncomfortable a little bit, right? To get there. Yeah. Love that.
Everything that I've done has been wildly uncomfortable. Everything
Hmm.
that I've done. But once again, then the previous uncomfortable thing gets more comfortable when you do it. Do you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
as you step into bigger arenas, I like to think about it like arenas. When I step into a bigger arena, the thing that I was previously a little bit scared about or nervous about, I'm no longer. Like I was nervous to get into the weight room the first few years. Now I just like walk in and I'm like, take me, baby. Like I'm here, right? So once again, like you keep stepping into bigger arenas, and then your capability expands with that too.
No longer a spectator. She's in the arena.
Hey,
Love it.
hold on. Wait,
You got
my,
it?
cli- my client got me this. It says the woman in the arena, even though it's
I
not even.
love it. I love it.
That's good.
My last question for you, Kelsey. What advice would you give to someone who's hearing the whisper of a dream or a path in life that just seems too crazy to chase?
I'm going to reiterate. Um, if it's within you, it's meant for you. If that
Mm,
dream is in your heart, it's meant for you. It is not a coincidence. It is not a, oh, this is just crazy. Like God placed this within you, right? And when you start to really take that to heart and that responsibility of like, oh, like this is placed within me. Like this dream is placed within my heart, not Michael's, not Kelsey's. Like it's my heart. Then you realize there is no coincidence in this. It is just requiring the courage to go after it. Right. And so, what I really want people to hear with that, and I needed to hear this. Like, if I heard this, I probably would have taken action on Mission 48 of like that dream, that I call it a nudge, you call it a whisper. That nudge is not a coincidence, girl or guy. It's not a coincidence. You need to take the courage and take that step. And you don't need to have the whole thing figured out tomorrow. Okay. I always
mm,
say, kind of plan it out, like figure out the why, but you don't need to know the how. I didn't know the how of how everything was going to transpire in Mission 48. Had no freaking clue, right? But I had to lean on that and trust that God placed it in my heart. And if it's for me, it's meant for me, right?
mm.
So that's what I would say. And just go for it. You'll never know. You just got to go for it.
Thank you. That was so, so good. I love everything we discussed. I could probably sit on here another 2 hours, and I know you and I will probably have to repeat this conversation in different formats in the weeks to come. But I'm going to put Kelsey's contact information in the show notes, and I'll tag her in on social. This is Kelsey Lensman. You're going to want to run through a wall following her. It just like listening to her speak today. So, Kelsey, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much. And everybody listening, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I have never had somebody literally encompass my entire life. Like you went from high school to now. So you're amazing at what you do. Keep on doing it. And everybody out there, keep on pursuing what's meant for you.